All right, we are live. All right, everyone, thank you. Back from lunch. Apologies for a little bit of delay. There was a lot of lunch hour meeting activity, so thank you for your patience. And thank you for your patience, Attorney Brown. We are doing an introduction, a walkthrough, and some witness testimony on H 462, an act relating to the approval of an amendment to the charter of the city of Burlington concerning just cause eviction. And we'll start off with Representative Hooper of Burlington, who is the sponsor of the proposal. Representative, you may shift your chair.
Bob Hooper, Burlington, here on 4th Avenue. Bill with a mouthful of cashews. 462 seeks to amend the charter of the city of Burlington to allow the city council to place things in the ordinance to govern how landlords interact and with tenants. Second page where most of the just cause provision stuff starts. I'm going to leave a lot of this since it's definitions and fine points to our attorney to elaborate on. But this was part of a bill that was passed last town meeting. Fairly favorably. I have the numbers here in my desk, but I didn't get to pull them out yet.
And I'm gonna say that those are cataloged on the
Yeah, I mean, we presented this.
the shared folder that we have that exists per the warehousing of council.
Printed it off.
Good to meet you.
$65.34.
Say that one more time.
$65.34.
And that's a percentage?
Yes.
Okay. So that sounds like a low vote total. Yep.
It was a cold day in Burlington.
Yeah.
So that's the essence of it. It's, I think, controversial to some degree. But we'll hear that from council, I suppose.
Yeah, we'll hear from the city attorney next, and get a little bit more like background on that. And then we'll talk to council about the words on the page.
That's it.
Okay.
Pretty straightforward.
Remember? How are you doing today?
Hi, I'm well. Jessica Brown, Burlington City Attorney, thank you for inviting us to provide some testimony on this item.
Yes. No, the table is yours. Please go ahead.
Okay, great. Thank you. So I want to start by emphasizing that the proposed charter language passed by Burlington voters in 2021 would give the Burlington City Council the authority to draft just cause eviction related ordinances. The charter language does not on its own bring just cause eviction protections to Burlington. A full ordinance process will still be required, including community engagement and public comment, and ultimately a city council vote. I do want to take this opportunity to identify a few contextual factors that I think make just cause eviction protections especially needed in Burlington, which is why I think voters supported this charter language. First, Burlington's housing market is structurally in need of just cause eviction protections, given that we have very low vacancy rates, high renter population, concentrated student and workforce housing, and we've seen rapid rent escalation over the past several years. There are not a lot of policy levers in state law currently to address the social, economic, and equity impacts of the high eviction rates that we're seeing. Right now, Burlington's housing policy can influence how much housing gets built, but we have very limited authority over how secure people are once they are in housing. So just cause eviction protections would give the city a tool to align two sides of its housing strategy, production and stability, a need that currently statewide landlord-tenant rules do not fulfill, given the nature of Burlington's housing market. Second, just cause eviction protections complement Mayor Mulvaney Stanik's housing strategy in Burlington by making the city's broader housing goals more robust and equitable. Just cause eviction protections complement supply side strategies and ensure housing stability as production increases. So the mayor's housing strategy focuses heavily on increasing housing production, but while increasing supply is crucial to lowering costs, it's not sufficient on its own to address our housing crisis in Burlington. Just cause eviction protections help ensure that once housing exists, people can stay in it, right? That's our goal. Just cause eviction protections work in tandem with new construction by ensuring that current residents are not displaced before new units can relieve the pressure on our housing market. This will help stabilize the housing market, making supply gains more durable and long-lasting for residents. Just cause eviction protections also advance equity consistent with the people-centered goals of Burlington's housing strategy. Mayor Mulvaney Stanik's strategy emphasizes people-centered and equitable housing policy, not just more units, but housing that serves the community's needs. Just cause eviction protections directly support that equity focus by reducing arbitrary displacements of low-income renters, protecting long-term residents who contribute to Burlington's social and economic fabric, and mitigating the harm of rent-driven moves that disproportionately affect seniors, families, and students. This complements the city's production-oriented goals by protecting community members while the city builds more affordable options. Third, just cause eviction protections build community trust and participation in Burlington's housing policy. The mayor's housing strategy stresses community engagement and democratic participation in shaping housing policy. Just cause eviction protections reflect a democratic choice made by Burlington voters and can build trust that the city's housing policies aren't solely focused on market outcomes. This contributes to a shared sense that housing policy is designed with residents, like in, working with residents and with residents in mind, not just for development purposes. And this will strengthen buy-in for other parts of the strategy. So together, these pieces make Burlington's housing approach more balanced, aiming not just to create housing, but again, to keep people securely housed as the city grows. And just cause eviction protections are not redundant. They make Mayor Mulvaney Stanik's broader housing investments more effective. One final contextual factor that I want to point out is that just cause eviction protections reduce avoidable displacement into homelessness. Given the historic rates of homelessness we are currently seeing in Burlington and across the state, keeping people housed has taken on a new level of urgency. Just cause eviction protections prevent people from losing housing for no stated reason in Burlington's already very low vacancy market. So in a city where shelter capacity and supportive housing resources are strained, to say the least, right now, keeping people stably housed is more effective and less costly than rehousing them after eviction. So by narrowing evictions to defined legitimate causes, just cause eviction protections function as an upstream homelessness prevention tool that supports broader efforts to stabilize the housing system. Vermont has a strong tradition of town meeting governance and municipal authority. Just cause eviction protections are widely supported by Burlington voters, receiving, I think, close to 64% voter approval when passed in 2021, and reflect the democratic will of Burlington residents. So short of any constitutional or state law conflicts, we hope that the General Assembly will honor the decision of Burlington voters. Thank you for letting me make a statement, and I'm happy to try to answer any questions.
No, thank you. That was great context to, how we got here with the proposal in committee. And so I guess one of my questions right now, and I speak housing market well, so with like the jargon and whatnot, what is the vacancy rate in Burlington as far as rental apartments? Because it's always been like low, like very low single digits from anything I've ever tracked.
Yeah, so I have information that is a few years old. I do not have 2026 data, but I believe based on a memo that was written in support of this resolution, the city council resolution back in 2021, that it was around 4% at that time. I'm just trying to find that memo. And I can certainly try to get you more current data.
Yeah, I was just curious about like what the vacancy rate is right now. I mean, I understand that the rent increases have been very, very notable as a percentage. I mean, that's been an active statewide conversation too. And I myself being from like the Chittenden County, Greater Burlington area, like I'm very well aware of the stress on the housing stock. So I was trying to bring that up just for like context for the committee who doesn't have a lot of experience in and around housing policy. So.
4% is the number that I've heard. So we also.
Okay, so yes, I did find my notes, and actually this is more recent information. I believe this was in 2023. And it was 0.4%, if that's possible.
That's definitely possible. I mean, I felt like there was a number somewhere around 1 or 2%, but I mean, I have heard horrifyingly like low vacancy rates of under 1% from other municipalities.
Yeah. So it looks like, and I believe these notes are from 2023 when this bill had a different number at the time, but was introduced by then Representative Emma Mulvaney-Stanek. And that was the number that she had at that time, 0.4% vacancy rate.
Yeah, I totally believe that number as like absolutely absurd as it sounds. To have less than 0.5% of the available stock open for rent. Yeah. And it definitely tracks from what I've heard. Any questions from the committee? So the conversations about some of this stuff within the statewide policy is going on with our housing committees right now, but I wanted to like have this conversation with you because I think it is very relevant to that conversation as well. And so if do you have any questions being a veteran of a housing committee?
I don't.
Not to put you on the spot.
No, because we had this discussion a lot in years past, and it seems like nothing has changed. The facts of the very low vacancy rate are still there. The facts that we have the second oldest housing stock in the nation are still there. And the facts that tenants have a lot of challenges, they're still there. But also on the flip side, landlords have a lot of challenges. So this definitely will take some thought, but I appreciate you coming in and meeting with us. I hope the housing committee is doing a real deep dive into this because I'd be interested in their perspective on this. Thank you.
I have one more question for you, and it's just sort of like on the development trajectory. So there have been a fair amount of units going online in Burlington, but that doesn't seem to have like offset the vacancy rate, right? Like and obviously that increased. I'm not trying to set this up as like a leading question with commentary, but with the amount of units that have gone online probably since 2023, right? That was kind of like how we all have seen like the exit from COVID sort of benchmark year. And now that we're 2-ish years out, that the number of units that have gone online, new builds, whatnot, hasn't really done much to like offset the pressure.
Yeah, so I think what I'd like to offer is that the one person I didn't consult with today in preparation for this hearing was our director of city planning. And so what I would like to offer is that I would be happy to get some specific numbers from our planning department about sort of the rate of development, the current trajectory for our development rate, and more units coming online, and what our most current vacancy rate is, and if that, if the development that we've had in the past 2 to 3 years has moved the needle on our vacancy rate at all, and if so, how much. So I'd be happy to get that, a short memo written and submitted to the committee as soon as possible.
No, that would be very helpful. Yeah. Whatever you can find and sort of delineate for us for a memo on what the current situation looks like would be helpful.
Absolutely.
Any further questions from the table? Seeing no hands. All right. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me, and I'll submit additional information as soon as possible. Thanks so much. Have a good afternoon.
You as well. Hi, council.
All right, good afternoon, House Government Operations. For the record, Tucker Anderson, Legislative Counsel, you have in front of you H 462, which contains a proposal of amendment for the City of Burlington Charter. You will notice in section 1, in the boilerplate approval language that I typically skip for you, that these were charter proposals that were approved by the voters on March 2nd, 2021. As a bit of history before jumping into this, H 708 of 2021 was passed by the House and the Senate, containing similar language to this with some amendments from the then House Government Operations, No Military Affairs Committee. And the bill was subsequently vetoed and failed on a veto override vote. So you have the language as passed by the voters in H 462 in front of you. H 462 proposes to amend the Burlington City Charter in section 48 related to the powers of the City Council to add a new subdivision 67 related to just cause eviction. In 67 sub A, the bill states that the City Council shall have the power to provide by ordinance protections for residential tenants as defined in 9 VSA chapter 137. So there is a definition for residential tenancy in that chapter. From eviction without just cause, where just cause shall include. And recall that whenever the General Assembly uses an inclusive clause in a bill, that means that we are going into a list of things that is non-exhaustive. So it could be more than this, but at minimum, you'll have this list. A tenant's material breach of a written rental agreement a tenant's violation of state statutes regulating tenant obligations in residential rental agreements, non-payment of rent, and a tenant's failure to accept written, reasonable, good faith renewal terms. So those are the four sole bases that are articulated in the inclusive list for the ordinance defining just cause under these procedures. Subdivision B, an express exclusion from just cause. The ordinance shall exclude from just cause the expiration of a rental agreement as the sole grounds for the termination of tenancy. In addition to the exemptions in Chapter 137 of Title IX, the ordinance shall exempt from this provision, subject to mitigation provisions, sublets and in-unit rentals, as well as the following properties. And I would recommend, it's been in there every time this bill has been introduced and reintroduced, but not limited to, be struck, because it is unnecessary and it is not drafted in accordance with the drafting manual. All right, Romanet 1, owner occupied duplexes, triplexes, those being withdrawn from the rental market, including properties to be occupied by the owner or an immediate family member, and those in need of substantial renovations that preclude occupancy. In subdivision C, the ordinance shall include provisions that mitigate potential negative impacts on tenants and property owners, including requirements of adequate notice and reasonable relocation expenses, provide for a reasonable probationary period after initial occupancy, and limit unreasonable rent increases to prevent de facto evictions or non-renewals, although this shall not be construed to limit rents beyond the purpose of preventing individual evictions. Finally, the ordinance shall define what is reasonable and adequate notice in defining just cause, and require that landlords provide notice of just cause and other legal requirements as part of the rental agreement. Now, for purposes of that last subdivision, the discretion that is being delegated within the four corners of the bill is to allow the city council to define those two terms wherever they are used within the procedures of just cause. So that would be the probationary period after initial occupancy. And if we are assuming by implication, what constitutes unreasonable rent increase.
Okay. So, I haven't looked at language like this in a long time, so apologies. Provide a reasonable probationary period after initial occupancy. So like, I guess what in concept, right? So that would just sort of be maybe like 90 days in, like a reevaluation kind of thing. Is how I'm reading it? Okay.
Yes. The first time this bill moved through, there was a lot of discussion about that, what that reasonable period would be and whether to constrain the ordinance authority there. And my recollection is that in the discussion in drafts that iteration of the Government Operations Committee in the House went through, it was everything from 90 days to 1 year. Ultimately, it went back to the voter approved language of a reasonable probationary period. I did note for you that H708 had some updates when it moved through the House from what the voters passed. I can send that to you. The Government Operations Committee added additional bases and exclusions. It added some, I don't want to qualify it, but I'll use the term protection because I think that's what the bill used, protections for small landlords. So if the committee's curious about the previous work of the General Assembly, I can send that along. I would also recommend that if the committee moves forward, that you have some of the landlord tenant experts in our office come in to talk about the underlying landlord tenant law in Vermont. And in particular, some of the provisions around the expiration of rental agreements and the way that that operates now. With the exclusion of that large part of the discussion of H708, you have holdover tenants as an inevitable result, which is a tenant that no longer has a written rental agreement with the landlord who has the right to stay in a rental unit if there are no other bases for eviction.
Understood. You got a question? Yeah, Rep. Nugent.
Forget where I heard this, but my understanding is that Vermont already has pretty much just cause eviction really statewide, and that what Burlington's asking for is no cause eviction, which is even more restrictive on landlords. And I was wondering if you could talk about the difference, or if that's just like a way of talking about it.
Yes, it sounds more like a way that someone else has qualified the state of the law related to landlord tenant law in Vermont, Title IX. But I'd be happy to connect you with Cameron Wood or Jonathan Gray, or to provide you with some legal research on the state of eviction in Vermont. Also, there are 5 proposals around landlord tenant updates in Vermont law. And Cameron did create a side-by-side chart that for the House General Committee of all 5 landlord tenant proposals and their eviction procedures as they're proposed in the 4 corners of those bills. So if you're curious about what is on the table, so to speak, for statewide policy, you could take a look at that chart. Very proud of Attorney Wood for putting that together so quickly.
Just as a housing policy nerd myself, I would very much appreciate just seeing that document. I don't think getting like an analysis on that other stuff is necessary right now. But if you have an existing document that was generated for another committee, please share. Yeah. Logical, right? Yeah. All right, so, and I mean, I don't want to get too hung up on the words right now because we're just doing like an introduction and a walkthrough with a little bit of testimony. Because I'm just putting my brain into a committee I don't sit in anymore. So we don't need to do that now. Representative Hooper.
That Tucker's comment does speak to the idea of us doing something for a metropolitan area and somebody else doing something statewide. And that's the duplication of effort. And
Well-
consistent for citizens moving place to place.
Well, and that was, yeah, and part of the reason I wanted to do this today was we just hadn't done this with this bill. And also with the conversation that's going on in the housing committees right now, like I don't want to do anything that's like duplicative, but I think it was like I felt it was a wise idea to look at this right now with the proposal because it is something that is in our room. It has been a conversation within the community in the building, but also to give us a little bit of a knowledge within the subject matter as those other policies float around. So I felt like doing this now felt like it served a couple of purposes.
We did have a lot of discussion on here, there, and everywhere. So,
Yeah, I agree with you, Bob, but I do feel like there are a lot of new people. So it's good to have the conversation again, 5 years later.
I agree, because we shouldn't just brush over.
Yeah.
I guess I would just add that I don't understand why town council would want to get involved in landlord tenant disputes and as a landlord myself, my property. For the city to tell me that I've got to follow certain ordinances to I don't know, I just not sold on.
Yeah. Any other questions for council or commentary on this particular bill? All right. Well, that's all we have for formal committee testimony today. We'll just go back into that bucket where there's plenty of work moving around with multiple bills right now. So we will break for the colloquial study hall until the floor, and then we will meet back here tomorrow, 9 a.m., where we are going to take up 867 and do some work on our accountability bill. And I mean before the floor. What's that?
I mean, before the floor.
No,
No. We are study hall until the floor.
No, tomorrow.
Or is it 9:30?
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. Friday. I thought tomorrow was Thursday. Hi, Tucker. All right, Nick, go ahead and pick us up. Yeah, no, I misspoke on that one. It'll be after the floor.